Welcome, dear friend, to a quiet moment of rest. Thank you for joining me this evening as we embark on a gentle journey together, designed to guide you into the calm depths of slumber. Before we begin, make sure you're in a safe and comfortable space, somewhere you can close your eyes and let go of the day's worries. As you settle in, allow your breathing to slow and soften. Notice how each breath brings with it a wave of calm, gently flowing from your head to your toes. Imagine a soft, warm glow surrounding you, like a lullaby in the air, ready to carry you into a peaceful night's sleep. Now, let's step into our story, one soothing word at a time. Chapter 1. A Whistle in the Twilight. The very first rays of the fading sun curled gently around the old station's rusted roof. Paint peeled from the wooden walls, revealing the bare boards beneath, as if trying to recall long-lost memories. Winds sang whispery lullabies through cracks in the building's frame, and a faint echo of a distant whistle drifted across the tracks. It was here that the train to nowhere would begin its slow, peaceful journey. Maria stepped onto the worn platform with a curious mixture of wonder and calm. Her shoes tapped on the aged planks, each step stirring flecks of paint that danced in the amber light. She carried only a small suitcase, packed with a few garments and a single well-read novel. Perhaps she sensed that this trip would not need much in the way of material belongings. The promise of serenity drew her like a magnet. Locomotive itself was a vision of antique charm, its brass fixtures and deep burgundy exterior reflecting a timeless grace. The name, Nowhere Express, curved across its side in faded gold lettering, half obscured by swirling vines of daydream imagery. Its windows were tall and narrow, revealing plush seats upholstered in emerald velvet. Everything about it seemed to belong to another era, a space outside the modern rush, as though it only glided forward when no one else was watching. Maria had purchased her ticket from an old man who ran a discount stand at the city edge. "It'll take you wherever peace may be found," he had said cryptically, sliding the ticket across his makeshift counter. She didn't fully understand, but something about the promise of quiet exploration kindled a gentle glow in her chest. Now, at the station, each minute felt like a breath of fresh wind in a tranquil meadow. With a final lingering glance at the silent platform, Maria stepped onto the train. The carriage greeted her with soft golden lamps that flickered in vintage sconces along the walls. Polished wooden trim lined the corridors, and the delicate scent of chamomile drifted from somewhere deeper within. She passed rows of seats, a few already occupied by travelers who wore serene expressions. Some read books, some gazed out the windows at the pink and gold evening sky, and others merely sat eyes closed, as though visiting quiet forests of thought. An amicable conductor, dressed in a crisp uniform, tipped his hat to Maria as she took her seat near a window. Outside, twilight was settling in, bathing the station in a medley of blues. The engine began to hum, a gentle vibration through the floor, like a slow and assured heartbeat. Then came that mystical whistle again, a lingering note that seemed to wave farewell to everything that had been left behind. At that moment, the train eased forward, wooden frames creaking softly. Each rotation of the metal wheels on the track carried an undercurrent of promise, a vow to deliver a calm experience, unbound by hurried schedules. The Nowhere Express was setting forth on a voyage beyond ordinary time. As the engine's thrumming smoothed into a steady lullaby, Maria felt her worries slip away, replaced by a sense of trust in the unknown. Leaning back, she allowed her gaze to drift beyond the window. Trees stood tall in the distance, like silent sentinels in the fading light. The hush of oncoming night caressed her senses, an invitation to exhale. Tomorrow, the journey would truly begin. For now, she let the lull of the train's gentle swaying and the hush of dusk guide her into a peaceful doze, lulled by the comforting hum that promised a slow path toward tranquil destinations, and just maybe toward finding pieces of herself she had forgotten. Chapter 2. The First Stop. Hidden lake morning arrived in a subtle glow, pale sunlight filtering through the vintage window panes. Maria awoke to the hushed clatter of the train rolling steadily along. Her fellow passengers were gradually stirring, soft murmurs filling the corridor. Outside, the landscape revealed a pristine wilderness wrapped in dawn's gentle mist. She felt a stirring of quiet excitement, unsure of exactly what lay ahead, but content to float with the rhythmic motion of the wheels. Eventually, the train slowed, its whistle announcing the first stop. Through the glass, Maria observed the silhouette of a lonely platform perched near a glittering lake. The sign read, "Hidden Lake." Swans glided on the mirror-like surface, while slender reeds nodded along the banks. The sky's pastel hues tinted the water pale pink and brushed gold streaks across the horizon. Gathering her small suitcase, Maria stepped out onto the wooden planks. The station was little more than a simple shelter with a wooden bench, yet it radiated a tender charm as though sculpted by the gentle hands of nature. The air carried a clean, fresh scent, tinged with hints of pine and dew-kissed grass. Her shoulders relaxed against the simple quiet that settled around her like a comforting shawl. A few other passengers disembarked. Some strolled by the water's edge, while others paused to admire the glimmering reflections. An older woman with a soft smile offered a wave in greeting, before wandering toward the tall birch trees lining a hidden path. No one seemed rushed. Here, time felt more fluid, measured by the rustle of leaves rather than ticking clocks. Feeling drawn toward the lake's shore, Maria ventured closer, her footsteps light on mossy ground. The swans paid her no mind, peaceful guardians of this mystical oasis. A wooden rowboat sat quietly near the dock, tied to a weathered post. It was as if the small craft was just waiting for someone to come along and slip onto the still waters. When Maria placed a hand on the rowboat's edge, she felt a pulse of warm acceptance, an unspoken invitation to drift. Tentatively, she untied the rope and sat on the bench, setting her suitcase carefully down. With soft strokes of the oars, the rowboat cut a glistening path through the lake's surface. Tendrils of morning light scattered across her lap, and a sense of serenity enveloped her as the boat bobbed gently. Drifting along, Maria took in the pristine shore and the faint silhouette of the vintage train resting at the station. Ever so slowly, the world seemed to fade into an intimate hush. Here, she found a kind of healing in stillness, a sanctuary from the noise she had left behind. Faint birdsong mingled with the dip of the oars, nature's lullaby guiding her in a soft waltz. By the time she returned to the dock, the morning sun sat higher in the sky, and the train conductor could be seen welcoming passengers back on board. She felt renewed. Her heart, once weighed by everyday worries, now beat in tune with the gentle rhythms of this peaceful place. Though the stop at Hidden Lake was short, it left a resonant hush within her soul, an unspoken reminder that simplicity has its own kind of majesty. Before she boarded once more, Maria paused to study the calm waters. The memory of her short glide across the lake seemed to glow, a seed of peace nesting in her core. With that quiet comfort, she stepped back into the corridor of the train, ready for the next chapter of the Nowhere Express's journey, carrying the fragrance of pine and dawn with her like a treasured keepsake. Chapter 3. The Lesson of the Blossoms. Moving onward from Hidden Lake, the Nowhere Express coasted through rolling countryside. Soft clouds drifted outside the windows, their delicate forms tinted by gentle sunlight. A mild hush filled the corridor, and Maria found herself wandering through the train's various carriages, drawn by an unspoken curiosity. Every carriage, she realized, seemed to have its own mood. Some were furnished with antique armchairs and small tables, others with long sofas and extraordinary stained glass windows that caught the daylight with dreamy color. Reaching a compartment near the end of the train, she gently slid open the door. Inside, the walls were lined with shelves of unfamiliar books. Bright flowers in slender vases graced a handful of small tables. The fragrance of fresh blooms suffused the air, lending it a serene, almost meditative quality. She noticed a middle-aged gentleman reading intently, a warm glow in his eyes as though the pages contained long-lost wisdom. Feeling the hush of this special spot, Maria settled herself on a velvet cushion in a corner. She took a small volume from one of the shelves, its title in an ornate script, partially faded. Opening it carefully, she found sketches of flowering trees, accompanied by gentle poetry describing each variety's symbolic meaning. The text spoke as if guiding the reader on a reflective journey. Some blossoms symbolized renewal or hope, while others stood for quiet acceptance. It felt less like mere instruction and more like an invitation to look inward. She lost herself in those pages until the train began to slow. Peering out the window, she saw that the landscape had shifted into a patchwork of flowering orchards. Hues of pale pink, snowy white, and pastel peach dominated the scene. Each individual tree stood as though in gentle conversation with its neighbors, branches heavy with blossoms that danced in the breeze. The sign at the station read, "Cherry Vale." Maria stepped onto the platform with several other curious passengers. A petal-laden path stretched beyond the station, leading them quietly among rows of blossoming trees. The soft crunch of gravel beneath their feet and the faint buzzing of bees were the only sounds to accompany them. Here, time felt suspended in an endless spring. Following the meandering trail, Maria reached a small clearing where sunlight beamed through the blossoms overhead, creating an ever-shifting pattern of light and shadow. A wooden bench sat beneath one such tree, its branches arching overhead like an embrace made of flowers. She sat down, letting the hush of nature settle gently upon her. The air smelled of sweet pollen and fresh greenery. Petals, occasionally lofted, down in soft flurries, landing on her shoulders and hair. She sensed a depth of peace here, akin to the silent, steady patience of a tree that blooms without hurry or fanfare. Perhaps it was reminding her that growth does not happen overnight. It unfurls softly, petal by petal. She watched as fellow travelers gathered blossoms that had drifted to the ground, cupping pink petals in their palms as though cradling a precious memory. Others spoke in hushed tones, reflective, as if the orchard's tranquility granted them the space to share unstated hopes and dreams. In that moment, Maria felt oddly timeless, touched by a gentle realization that sometimes the simplest beauties are the ones that awaken our hearts. An hour or so passed. At least, that was her guess, given that no one seemed to measure time in minutes here. As the breeze picked up, the blossoms rustled in a shimmering ballet, urging them to return to the train. Petals clung to Maria's hair as she followed the path back to the station, even after she stepped inside the carriage and settled once more into her seat. She could not shake the lingering sense of renewal, of having learned some soft-spoken truth from the blossoms. Just before the train pulled away, she caught a glimpse of a sign. All who wander among the blossoms shall remember the beauty of slow change. The wheels began to turn again, and the orchard slipped calmly out of view. With it, Maria carried an unspoken vow to savor gentle transformations, no matter how quietly they might unfold. Chapter 4. A Dream in the Fog Long. After the orchards of Cherry Vale faded, the train entered a mist-shrouded region. Outside, the world glowed with a pearly sheen, as if someone had dipped the scenery in soft moonlight, despite it being midday. Trees became vague silhouettes in the distance, their outlines melting into an ethereal haze. The rhythmic lull of the train's motion seemed amplified in this quiet realm, as though traveling along a corridor of dreams. Maria felt drawn to the observation car at the center of the train, a space woven mostly of windows and glass panels overhead. She settled into a seat, facing the panorama of shifting fog. Other passengers gathered there too, wearing entranced expressions, each one content in the ghostly world beyond the windows. The train slowed to a near crawl, cautious of the limited visibility. Its whistle pierced the silence, a gentle beacon that sounded both lonely and reassuring. An understanding spread among the riders. This stretch of the journey fit the train's timeless aura perfectly. Here, there were no bright distractions, only the fog that asked them to look inward and listen to the quiet that defined the in-between moments of travel. Eventually, the conductor ambled through the car, his polished uniform faintly aglow under the lamps. "Our next stop is Fogmore," he announced with a gracious tilt of his hat. "We'll stay for a short while, so you may wander, if you wish to explore the mysteries of the mist." Within minutes, the train eased to a stop at a lonely platform, suspended, it seemed, in a sea of swirling silver. Maria disembarked carefully, feeling as though she had stepped into a dream. Even the station sign, Fogmore, emerged only when the wind momentarily thinned the haze. A narrow wooden walkway extended beyond the station, perhaps leading to farmland or a small hamlet enshrouded by the ever-present mist. She ventured forward, footsteps muffled by the damp boards. The air was cool against her cheeks, and each breath tasted faintly of pine and damp earth. Shapes flickered at the edges of her vision, perhaps trees or fence posts drifting in out of the fog. Deeper in, a faint glow suggested a cluster of lanterns, and as Maria ventured closer, she made out an old-fashioned tea house. Its walls were made of dark wood, and soft light glimmered through frosted windows. Pushing open the creaking door, she discovered a single large room, cozy and warm. Tables were spaced widely, each adorned with a simple candle, and the floor was covered in straw mats that lent a rustic charm. A friendly woman behind the counter gave a gentle smile. "Choose wherever you like," she said in a low voice. "The tea is made to soothe wandering spirits." Maria picked a corner table near a window, though outside the pane there was little to see beyond swirling whiteness. She ordered a simple herbal blend, and as she sipped the steaming cup, her senses filled with the fragrant warmth of chamomile and mint. The hush within the tea house felt like a sanctuary, a place that begged no questions about who you were or where you were heading. Soft conversation drifted among the handful of passengers who had also found this place. They talked in distant tones so as not to break the quiet atmosphere that enveloped them. Every now and then, the door opened with a melancholy chime, letting in a swirl of fog and another traveler seeking respite. Eventually, Maria finished her tea, thanked the tea house owner, and stepped back into the clouded world. Perhaps an hour had slipped by, maybe two. Fogmore seemed to exist outside normal time. Returning to the station, she found the Nowhere Express waiting, its windows glowing like gentle beacons. As the train pulled away, fog pressed close to the glass once more, but Maria felt awake in her spirit, sharpened by the stillness. She replayed the quiet forms she had glimpsed in drifting outlines, the steaming tea at the rustic table, and the hush that seemed to hush everything. Yes, even in a realm of milky uncertainty, a soothing revelation had settled in her heart. Sometimes it is in the opaque moments that we see ourselves most clearly. Chapter 5. Sunrise over the sands, the morning that followed. Fogmore dawned bright and clear, as though the lingering clouds had been gently swept away by an unseen breeze. From the train's windows, Maria beheld a grand expanse of shifting sand. Dunes stretched beneath a wide, pastel sky. The sun rose slowly, painting the horizon in swirls of peach and lemon, casting long shadows across the dunes that wavered in the early light. The Nowhere Express glided at a measured pace, as if reluctant to disrupt the calm sea of sand. Inside the carriages, a soft excitement permeated the travelers. Some huddled near the windows, awe in their eyes, while others ventured to the lounge, car for a quiet cup of tea. Every so often, a child's gleeful gasp would echo down the corridor at the sight of the rolling desert scenery. Even Maria, who was prone to daydreaming, found herself captivated by the mesmerizing patterns the wind left behind on the dunes. Soon, the train's whistle sounded, low and unhurried, and the wheels began to slow. A sign, half buried in sand, read, "Suncrest Dunes." The station here was little more than a sturdy wooden platform that stood defiantly in the midst of the sweeping desert. Wooden steps led down onto the fine sand, and a canvas awning offered slight relief from the already intensifying sun. Maria and a handful of others disembarked, curiosity guiding them to the powdery ground. The moment her feet touched the warm sand, she felt as if the desert had welcomed her into its own quiet dance. An occasional breeze riffled the top layer of grains, sculpting small, transient ridges and sending them skittering across the plain. Off to one side, an old nomadic guide greeted them with a respectful nod. His sun-weathered skin and gentle smile spoke of a lifetime spent wandering these dunes. Sun's fresh upon the desert. There's a hidden oasis not far, he offered softly. You're free to follow if you wish. His invitation was met with appreciative smiles, and a small group, Maria included, joined him with calm anticipation. Their trek was serene. Each step sank slightly into the sand, and the guide led them along natural ridges where the walking was easier. In the vastness, the only sounds were the whispery crunch of footsteps and the distant calls of desert birds. Over each rise, an unbroken vista of pale gold opened up, and the serenity of it all reminded Maria of the intangible beauty that thrives in stillness. At length, a green shimmer appeared on the horizon. Approaching closer, they found a small oasis cradled by slender palm trees, a pool of crystal water surrounded by tall, feathery grasses. The group knelt by the water to fill their canteens, the coolness offering relief from the desert warmth. Maria cupped her hands for a drink, marveling at the fresh sweetness. At that moment, she understood how precious water must feel in a parched land. A few travelers rested in the shade under the palms. Others simply lingered on the edge of the pool, letting their toes ripple the water's surface. Maria closed her eyes, savoring the rich quietude. The desert, though seemingly barren, felt alive with a gentle heartbeat. The hush around her seemed to underscore the vital significance of simple resources: water, shade, the patient endurance of nature. Eventually, the guide gave a small nod, wordlessly signaling a return to the station. They retraced their steps back across the dunes, the sun now higher in the sky, lengthening the shadows behind them. When Maria arrived back at the platform, the Nowhere Express stood ready, as if in silent reflection of their tranquil outing. With a heart brimming with gratitude, Maria climbed aboard. She paused at the threshold, glancing back over her shoulder at the endless stretch of sand. In that single breath, she felt the desert's quiet lesson sink in. Sometimes it is the simplest gifts, a drop of water, a patch of shade, that reveal the depth of life's blessings. Then the door closed with a gentle click, and the train eased forward once more, carrying them steadily onward beneath the ever-reddening sun. Chapter 6. Evening. Glow of the lantern. Town. Not long after departing Suncrest Dunes, the train veered into a region of rolling hills dotted with meandering streams. Maria found herself drawn to the dining car in the late afternoon, where she savored a bowl of lentil soup and rustic bread. The gentle clinking of silverware and hushed conversation of fellow travelers lent a cozy atmosphere. Warm lamplight cascaded across white tablecloths, and through the windows she observed the sun descending among ridges. After her meal, she wandered back to her seat, gazing out at the changing sky. Vivid streaks of orange, crimson, and violet stretched across the horizon, each color melting into the next. The Nowhere Express decelerated, announcing its next destination with a soft whistle. As it came to a gentle stop, Maria peered out to see a quaint town nestled in a valley. Above the wooden rooftops hung strings of colorful lanterns, swaying in the mild evening breeze. The sign at the platform read, "Lantern Haven." Curiosity sparked in her mind, and she stepped off the train onto cobblestone streets illuminated by a rainbow of lanterns. Each lantern was crafted of colored paper or fine silk, intricately patterned and lit from within by flickering candles. The town itself was alive with soft murmurs. A marketplace was in progress, though nothing like a rush. Instead, stalls offered delicate handicrafts, aromatic teas, and floral candles. Gentle music, perhaps from a flute, wove through the lanes. Maria meandered among the stalls, stopping whenever something caught her eye. She purchased a small hand-painted lantern depicting a scene of moonlit cherry blossoms, reminded fondly of Cherry Vale. She tucked it carefully into her bag, eager to place it near a window in her train compartment. There was a tranquil joy in this town. Neighbors greeted one another with sincere kindness, and the entire space glowed under the hush of gathering twilight. An older couple sat on a bench near a flower stall, sharing stories with a group of travelers. When Maria paused nearby, the couple smiled and waved her over. "Thank you for stopping in our peaceful place," the man said, his voice low but brimming with warmth. His wife held a small string of lanterns around her wrist, each lantern no bigger than a peach. "These lights remind us that even in darkness, we can create our own glow," she added gently. Maria sat with them a while, letting their conversation lull her into a soft calm. The woman recounted how Lantern Haven began as a small community of candle makers. Generations ago, villagers had learned that by illuminating the night with beautiful lanterns, people found comfort and connection. Over time, their craft grew into an art form known far and wide for its delicacy and warmth. As the evening wore on, the lanterns began to sway more dramatically in the mild wind, creating a mosaic of dancing shadows on the streets. Children giggled as they chased the shifting patches of light. A sense of timelessness pervaded. Eventually, the soft chime of the station's clock tower reminded travelers that the train would soon depart. Reluctantly, Maria bid farewell to the kind couple, promising to remember their gracious hospitality. Drifting back to the platform, she stole A final glance at the softly glowing streets. Lantern Haven seemed to release a gentle sigh of farewell as well, its myriad lights nodding in the breeze. As she climbed the steps onto the Nowhere Express, she felt enveloped by that very glow, as though she carried it within her. The train's whistle sounded softly, and the wheels rolled into the night. In her seat, Maria placed the small lantern on the windowsill. Its delicate glow made her smile, reflecting in the dark glass like a hopeful star. The door to tomorrow's destination had yet to be opened, but for now, this warm memory of lanterns and gentle laughter carried her contentedly through the quiet hours ahead. Chapter 7. Ocean's hushed night's velvet darkness cradled the train as it chugged along, and while lanterns and gentle lamps lit the interior, the windows revealed only faint silhouettes of passing landscapes. Some passengers had dozed off. Others sat quietly, reading by the subdued glow of overhead sconces. Maria, too, felt herself drifting in and out of light sleep, lulled by the carriage's rhythmic sway. Eventually, late-night hours melted into a soft, silvery dawn when she opened her eyes fully. She realized the train had come to a standstill. Outside, an otherworldly quiet stretched forward, and a crisp breeze filtered through a slightly open window. Rising from her seat, she peered out, only to see the vast, endless ocean extending to the horizon. The station, Pier's End, was perched on a cliff overlooking waves that shimmered beneath a delicate sky of early morning rose. Drawn to the seascape, Maria left the train and felt cool air wash over her. Gulls called overhead in hushed voices, and the briny scent of ocean salt tingled her senses. A winding staircase led down the cliffside to a narrow beach of pale sand, and she descended carefully, marveling at the rhythmic crash of waves that punctuated the hush. Once on the shore, she removed her shoes to feel the cool grains between her toes. Morning light splashed across the gentle ripples that parted the horizon. A few early risers strolled at a distance, footprints dissolving behind them. The water's edge beckoned, its foam quivering at her ankles as she inched closer. Each wave seemed to whisper its own story of far-off currents and the immeasurable depths beneath. She noticed a solitary figure standing on a large driftwood log. It was a man, shoulders draped in a simple shawl, gazing intently at the sea as though he might glimpse answers in that boundless space. Sensing Maria's approach, he turned and offered a polite nod. "It's humbling, isn't it?" he said, gesturing toward the horizon. "All that space makes one wonder what truths lie hidden in the deep." Maria nodded in agreement, taking a moment to absorb the enormity. The man spoke of having traveled far, following whispers of healing found in unhurried places. "I've ridden countless trains," he confided, "but this one, This one goes beyond simple destinations. His gaze returned to the water, and Maria felt a quiet symmetry with his thoughts. This train was more than a route. It was a passage that touched the soul. Indeed, each stop presented a chance to embrace calm or reflect upon life's hidden aspects. They spoke briefly, sharing small fragments of their stories, the exchange punctuated by the hush of waves. Eventually, the man gave a parting smile and set off along the beach. Maria remained a while longer near the surf, letting the softness of the sea's voice ease any tension in her mind. The brine in the air felt cleansing, as though it could carry away lingering worries. As the sun lifted higher, warming the sand beneath her feet, voices drifted down from the cliff where the train was stationed. The Nowhere Express would soon continue, ever faithful in its gentle schedule. Reluctantly but peacefully, Maria gathered her shoes and ascended the winding stairs. At the top, she scanned the ocean one final time, its timeless expanse stretching far beyond the limits of sight, and then stepped onto the old wooden platform. The train's conductor greeted her with a polite tip of his hat. "We're departing soon," he said, in a voice that matched the hush of the sea. Once aboard, Maria found her seat and lowered the window halfway, allowing salty air to linger a moment longer. The whistle sounded, a sound almost lost beneath the rolling tide below. Slowly, the train pulled away from Pier's end, leaving the quiet shoreline behind, but taking the memory of that vast reflective ocean along for the ride. Chapter 8. Into the Heart of the Redwoods. From the coastal cliffs, the Nowhere Express veered inland, winding through valleys blanketed with wild flowers. Afternoon light slanted warmly across fields, and gentle streams trickled under wooden bridges. Now and then, Maria caught glimpses of small farmsteads or cottage roofs peeking from behind a fringe of trees. She pondered how many hidden pockets of tranquility existed in the world previously unknown to her. As day softened toward evening, the train reached higher elevations. Towering redwood trees lined the tracks, their lofty crowns merging into a canopy that filtered sunlight into honey-gold beams. The train slowed, revealing an ancient platform enveloped by forest. Moss and ferns sprouted abundantly around the station's base, and the sign read, "Gaia's Grove." Once the brakes squeaked to a halt, Maria stepped onto the wooden boards and felt instantly dwarfed by the majestic trunks surrounding her. The air carried a profound stillness, broken only by the distant sigh of a breeze through lofty branches. In subtle patches of light, dust motes drifted like shimmering fairies. A sense of gentle reverence settled among the passengers who disembarked, each voice lowered instinctively in respect for the grandeur of nature. A narrow trail led from the station deeper into the redwood forest. Maria followed with quiet footsteps, her eyes tracing the length of each massive tree. She pressed her palm against the bark of one trunk, feeling the faint heartbeat of centuries within its rings, surrounded by living giants that had endured through countless seasons. She felt a grounding calm, as though time itself had slowed to match the unhurried growth of these venerable guardians. Partway along the path stood a small wooden sanctuary, constructed from felled branches long ago. Bench-like seats formed a circle willfully left open to the forest, and overhead, the canopy parted just enough to reveal an oval window of sky. A few travelers paused there in meditative silence, letting the forest's hush envelop them. Maria joined them, taking a seat on one of the crude benches. For a few breaths, she closed her eyes, focusing on the living hush of ancient roots and leaves above. The earth smelled rich and humus-laden, a tapestry of complex scents woven from decades of fallen needles, bark, and dew. Subtle bird calls wove in from distant boughs. As the afternoon light grew slanted, golden beams angled through the leaves, turning the forest floor into a mosaic of bright patches. A gentle breeze whispered across Maria's cheek. Eventually, the distant sound of the train's whistle signaled the approaching evening. Rising from her seat, with a feeling akin to waking from a beautiful dream, she made her way back along the trail. The station now flickered with soft lantern light, and in that glow, the redwoods assumed an even more mysterious majesty. Climbing aboard, Maria settled into her seat. Outside, the vast forest receded into the distance, though its memory felt imprinted on her heart. She understood that in these silent places, whispers of life's resilience and patience could be discerned. The train's wheels began to turn again, carrying her gently onward among tall shadows. Within those echoes of the forest's primal hush, she felt the promise of new lessons waiting beyond the next bend in the track, and she welcomed them with open spirit. Chapter 9: Moonlight and Fireflies. Some hours after leaving the majestic redwoods behind, dusk settled once again across the land. The Nowhere Express gently eased into another station, signaled by a soft whistle and a gradual slowing of the wheels. Through the windows, Maria glimpsed dusky meadows aflutter with tiny sparks of light, fireflies dancing in the encroaching night. Stepping onto the station's platform, she found it modest, bare boards illuminated by a single lantern swaying from a rustic post. The sky above was swiftly turning from pale lavender to deeper shades of blue. Crickets performed their nightly serenade, filling the warm summer air. The sign at the station read, "Everglow Fields," though Maria saw no evidence of a village, only endless meadows stretching far under a crescent moon. More travelers disembarked, each quietly entranced by the spectacle of myriad fireflies weaving intricate patterns just above the tall grass. Like the first stars appearing in the night sky, these little points of greenish-white light seemed to sparkle with playful energy. In the nearby field stood a small cottage with its windows aglow. Soft laughter issued from within, reminding Maria of an intimate gathering among friends. Drawn by curiosity, she and a few others approached. A warm voice called from the doorway, "Come in, travelers, if you don't mind a little company." Inside, they found a snug living area filled with mismatched chairs, a sturdy table bearing jars of honey and fresh bread, and a scattering of dried herbs hung along the rafters. Their hostess introduced herself as Adeline, a gentle-eyed woman with silver-streaked hair. "You've arrived on a beautiful evening," she remarked, gesturing to the open window through which a faint glow of fireflies flickered. "The fields are alive tonight, and you're free to watch as long as you wish." She prepared tea from lavender and lemon balm, then passed the steaming cups around. The scent alone was enough to soothe weary hearts. Maria sipped her tea, feeling a sense of belonging despite having only just arrived. The cottage was no busier than a whisper, with only a handful of people, some from the train, others, perhaps locals, gathered in calm conversation. In one corner, an old gramophone played, soft music that mingled with the fireflies' illuminated dance outside. Adeline explained how the glowing insects had inspired local legends of fairies and guiding lights, stories passed down through the generations. Eventually, Maria stepped out to the porch, teacup in hand. Beneath the shimmering moon, fireflies wove an otherworldly tapestry, blinking in and out of sight. She stood transfixed, letting the hush of the meadow and the flicker of minuscule lights lull her into reflection. Perhaps each tiny glow signified a cherished memory, briefly becoming visible before fading back into the shadows of time. A gentle wind rippled through the tall grass, nudging a wave of blinking insects to swirl skyward. The train's distant whistle reminded them that the journey would not linger. Returning her empty cup to Adeline with a grateful smile, Maria thanked her for the warmth and hospitality. Adeline's eyes shone kindly. "Take the peace of this place with you," she said softly. "And remember that even in darkness, there is light." Walking back toward the platform, Maria felt a thread of quiet joy, heart brimming with the night's magic. There was an undeniable softness to this stop, like an invitation to believe in small, everyday wonders. Once she and the other passengers boarded, the doors closed with a hush. As the train pulled away through the moonlit fields, she peered out the window, catching fleeting glimpses of fireflies still spinning in the night, a silent promise of enchantment that would guide her onward. Chapter 10. The Library of Lost Tomes morning arrived with the train curving through gently rolling hills, bathed in pale sunlight. Maria woke to the conductor's familiar footfalls in the corridor, followed by an announcement that their next stop would be a place known for its venerable library. Immediately, a spark of curiosity lit her mind. What stories might be discovered in a hidden library along the Nowhere Express route? The station sign read, Athena's Crossing, a quiet settlement of stone buildings and winding lanes spread around the platform. Well-tended gardens brimmed with herbs and flowers, and a decorative fountain in the square gurgled softly. Beyond the rows of houses stood a structure immense in both height and presence. The old library, or so Maria guessed from its elaborate facade of pillars and bas-reliefs depicting mythic figures. An arched wooden door bore the inscription, Within words we wander. She pushed it open, stepping into a cool hallway lined with shelves that soared almost to the vaulted ceiling. A hush like no other greeted her, part reverence, part eagerness. A kindly librarian in a long, earth-toned robe offered a gentle smile. Feel free to explore, she said, gesturing to the labyrinth of books. There is no hurry here. Maria wandered the corridors, fingertips brushing across row upon row of spines. Many were dusty, their titles faded by ages gone by. Others gleamed with fresh binding, testament to knowledge, still flourishing. Gentle lamplight hung from wrought iron fixtures overhead, casting puddles of warmth on reading desks. In the loftier sections, a spiral staircase led to dimmer alcoves where rare volumes were kept behind glass. Eventually, she reached a sign that said simply, Lost Tomes. Intrigued, she followed the narrow passage, emerging into a small chamber where only a single desk lamp burned. Shelves held peculiar books with worn or unreadable covers, the edges of their pages yellowed by time. Some had no titles at all. A sense of mystery, even longing, filled the air. Picking up one such volume, Maria carefully flipped through. The text within was incomplete, paragraphs trailing off into blank pages. The next book revealed a flutter of pressed flowers between chapters, with only partial lines of poetry scattered among them. She realized these books were lost in multiple senses. Unfinished manuscripts, diaries no longer claimed by anyone, entire texts with missing sections. Yet each fragment carried a haunting beauty, as though whispering echoes of lives that once burned bright. She settled at a small reading desk, drawn to an untitled journal penned in spidery handwriting. It seemed to chronicle a traveler's quest for hope after grief, each entry reflecting on quiet revelations in nature or fleeting moments of compassion from strangers. Though incomplete, it radiated a gentle resilience. By the final entry, the writer vowed to find a place somewhere beyond the horizon to plant new seeds of joy. But the pages ended abruptly. A tear slipped down Maria's cheek before she realized she'd grown so absorbed Something in those forgotten words spoke to her own hidden pangs, regrets, unspoken hopes, the longing for fresh beginnings. She never learned the writer's fate, but somehow the journal brought a sense of closeness to an unknown soul across time. Returning the journal to the shelf, she felt a quiet reverence, as if promising to carry that traveler's story forward. After a moment, she left the chamber and made her way back to the main hall. The librarian caught her eye, gave a small nod of understanding, then stepped aside to reveal a tall window where morning light spilled in. Maria paused there, letting the sun's rays warm her state of mind. Even incomplete narratives, she realized, held power to move hearts and awaken empathy. Shortly after, she rejoined the outside world. The train's whistle signaled it was nearly time to depart. Whatever secrets the Library of Lost Tomes held would remain for future wanderers. Yet Maria felt changed, her own story quietly enriched by the promise that even forgotten words can find new listeners. Boarding the train once more, she carried that lesson like a treasured bookmark in her spirit. Chapter 11. A valley of choir and echo from Athena's crossing, the Nowhere Express traveled steadily through a region of rolling slopes that soon gave way to dramatic cliffs. The route perched precariously above a deep valley, the sheer drop revealing a river winding far below. On the opposite side, jagged ridges rose into a hazy sky. Occasionally, the train slowed enough for passengers to peer out, marveling at the breathtaking panorama. By early afternoon, just as honey-colored sunlight began painting the crags with warmth, the train arrived at an overlook station built of sturdy stone. The sign carved into a boulder read, "Choir's Rest." Indeed, from this vantage, the valley opened up in all its grandeur. Maria exited the carriage, stepping onto a wide terrace lined with iron railing for safety. The wind there was immediate, carrying a subtle chord-like hum that seemed to linger in every gust. Some travelers leaned over the rail, gazing at the canyon walls. Birds of prey circled gracefully, their calls echoing against the rocky faces. A narrow staircase, hewn from the stone itself, descended into the valley. Compelled by an unspoken invitation, Maria carefully made her way down, each step leading her deeper. Partway, she discovered a small cavern entrance from which a melodic chant resonated, soft but unmistakable. Intrigued, she ventured in, finding a cathedral-like space of glistening stalactites and smooth rock walls that soared above her. In the dim light, half a dozen robed figures stood in a semicircle, singing a wordless harmony. Their voices blended with the chamber's acoustics, creating waves of echo that resonated through Maria's chest like an otherworldly lullaby. She stood transfixed, welcomed by their gentle nods, though they did not pause their choral expression. Each note floated through the cavern, swirling gently overhead before dissolving into the timeless hush. When their song concluded, the echoes persisted a moment longer, as if the rock itself were humming in accord. The singers turned to greet Maria with serene smiles. One stepped forward, an elderly man with kind eyes. "Welcome, traveler," he intoned softly. "We sing to honor the valley's voice. We believe that nature holds music within its bones, if only we listen." She introduced herself, still cradling the after-essence of their melody. The group seemed at ease here, as though this was their day-to-day piece. In hushed conversation, they explained how they visited various points in the valley, chanting harmonies that resonated uniquely in each cave or overhang. Their aim wasn't performance, but communion, an offering to the echoing canyons and a means to remind them of life's gentle interconnections. Maria joined them in a refrain, her voice uncertain at first, but soon carried along by their supportive harmonies. The vibrations through the cavern felt profoundly soothing, like letting one's heart speak without words. When the last note faded, a calm hush lingered, and Maria realized tears had gently welled in her eyes. It was a catharsis she hadn't known she needed. Eventually, she thanked the group for their generosity, and they bid her farewell, encouraging her to share the valley's music with anyone whose heart sought solace. Stepping back into the sunlight, Maria carried a sense of buoyancy, as though the harmony vibrated still within her chest. Climbing back up the cliffside steps, she emerged onto the station terrace just as the train whistled gently, calling its passengers. With one last look at the expansive gorge below, she climbed aboard. The chambers of her memory echoed with the choir's song, a subtle reminder that sometimes the world needs no words to speak. As the train rumbled away, shifting shadows danced across the valleys, and the stirring music of nature's hush accompanied them, waiting to be heard by all who cared to listen. Chapter 12. The Mirror. Labyrinth nightfall brought a sense of mystery. The train traversed a stretch of track, said to be decades old, winding through dense forests and mountain passes. Somewhere around midnight, Maria felt the Nowhere Express slow once more. Lamplight from the station platform revealed tall hedges behind an ornate wrought iron gate. A stone sign at the entrance, lit by flickering torches, bore the words "Mirror Labyrinth." A wave of intrigue spread among those who stirred for this midnight stop. Gathering her light jacket, Maria stepped into the cool night air. The hedge walls stretched on either side, framing a path that beckoned deeper into darkness. On an open courtyard just inside the gate, a caretaker stood with a friendly smile. An unusual time for exploring mirrors, she said softly. Yet, darkness can sometimes reveal truths bright daylight can't. Maria followed a few other travelers into the labyrinth. The hedges were tall enough to block out the world, leaving only starlight and the faint glow of lanterns placed at intervals. Soon, they came upon a stand of mirrors, some the size of a door, others smaller, each reflecting elongated or warped images. If one moved slightly, the reflection changed dramatically, revealing multiple angles of oneself in a bizarre dance. At first, laughter bubbled up from those who took the spectacle in stride. But as they wound deeper, the mirrors became more artful, showing not only reflections, but echoes of memory. Maria, rounding a corner, found herself facing a tall mirror whose surface shimmered in silvery moonlight. Her reflection stood silent, but behind it, images from her childhood surfaced in faint overlays. Running through sunlit fields, reading stories in a cozy library, laughing with friends she hadn't seen in years, tears pricked her eyes at these reflections. She took a breath, stepping closer. Instead of the typical distortion, she saw brief glimpses of old joys, regrets, and turning points, like a slideshow behind her present self. Though startled, she felt no fear. A gentle longing welled up, reminding her of tenderness and acceptance. Perhaps these mirrors revealed unspoken truths, glimpses of the past that shaped who she was now. Moving on, she encountered other mirrors that reflected different facets of her life. In one, she glimpsed burdens she carried, fears about the future, worries left unacknowledged. Another showed her smiling face, but gently shifting into a look of determined hope. It was as if each mirror was a chapter in her personal tapestry, and the labyrinth itself helped her weave them into wholeness. Eventually, the passage led to a circular clearing in the center of the hedge maze. A single tall mirror stood there, polished to an almost ethereal glow. Travelers came and went, pausing to see what this final mirror would reveal. When Maria stepped up, she saw herself in true reflection. No illusions, no hidden glimpses of memory. Simply her own face, quietly resolute in the moonlight. The realization struck her. Sometimes the greatest gift is to see oneself plainly, without distortion or fear. A gentle chime from the distant station clock reminded them that the train would soon depart. Along with the others, Maria made her way back, heart resonating with the labyrinth's silent wisdom. The caretaker at the gate offered her a small nod of understanding as she exited. "May your reflections guide you gently," she murmured in parting. Boarding the Nowhere Express, Maria found her usual seat. Outside, the mirrored realm slipped into darkness, existing now only in her memory. As the train jolted forward, she rested her head against the window. Though weary, her mind felt peacefully stirred, aware that the journey inward was just as crucial as the journey on the tracks. Chapter 13, Deserted Fairground. At dawn, the train rocked gently through the overnight hours, carrying Maria and her fellow passengers across unknown miles. By the time dawn shimmered on the horizon, the cars had grown quiet, with most travelers lulled to sleep by the carriage's rhythmic motion. Yet a subtle shift woke Maria, the Nowhere Express again coming to rest at a station bathed in timid daylight. A faded sign in bold letters read Rosewood Fairgrounds. The platform looked weathered and still. Once lively banners now hung in tattered remnants from tall poles, while sighting of half-broken carousel horses peeked through the chain-link fence. Even from a distance, a sense of nostalgia clung to the place, as though it remembered laughter that no longer echoed. Maria felt drawn to the deserted fair, stepping onto the platform and following a cracked asphalt path toward the rusting gates. A gentle breeze stirred, prompting a creak from the disused Ferris wheel in the distance. The entire place bore the hush of forgotten joy. Sunlight occasionally glinted off chipped paint, remnants of carnival colors. She passed a row of empty stalls, paint peeling from their edges. Here she imagined children once pleading for cotton candy, or excited screams from roller coaster riders. Now, only echoes of those sounds seemed to linger in the dusty air. Weeds poked through the ground, reclaiming what had been left behind. Drawn by some intangible pull, Maria located the carousel building. Its ornate wooden structure was time-worn, but still elegant in design. The entry opened onto a wide circular platform occupied by hand-carved horses frozen mid-prance. She ran her hand along the flank of one horse, feeling chipped layers of pastel paint. A sense of melancholy gripped her, mingled with odd comfort, like holding a memory close. Suddenly, a mild hum stirred overhead. High-placed windows allowed beams of rising sunlight to illuminate the carousel's center. In that golden glow, she could almost hear charming music from a hidden calliope. For a moment, the place felt alive again, brimming with children's laughter and vibrant color. And then, as reality reasserted itself, the hush returned. Outside, she noticed a lone caretaker sweeping debris near a funnel cake cart. He looked up, appearing unsurprised to see a visitor. In a quiet voice, he explained that the fairgrounds once bustled with light and life. But as time marched on, tastes changed and attendance waned until the place was eventually abandoned. Yet he remained, tending to the remnants out of fondness for the memories woven into every corner. Sometimes even forgotten wonders want gentle care, he said. Maria nodded, understanding that not all joys remain in the present. Some linger as recollections, asking to be honored in subtle ways. Thanking the caretaker, she felt gratitude for this glimpse into the fairgrounds' yesterdays, a reminder that laughter can haunt a silence beautifully, offering a sense of bittersweet wonder. Returning to the station, She cast one final glance at the worn carousel. The sun had risen fully now, painting the old horses in warm golden rays. Though deserted, the fairground seemed to release a gentle sigh of acceptance. Maria reboarded the train, heart-touched by the ephemeral nature of life's celebrations. She settled once more into her seat, resolved to cherish fleeting joys and remember that even in endings, gentle echoes can still bring quiet comfort. Chapter 14. Cloud bridge in the hills, the rails carried them onward through a rugged range of rolling hills. By mid-morning, clouds drifted low across the slopes, their pearly forms casting soft shadows on the fields below. The train eventually slowed at a small hilltop station built of pale stone. A gentle breeze ruffled the sign that read, Cloudspan Summit. From the platform, a footpath led upward through a copse of eucalyptus trees whose leaves danced with a distinctive rustle. Maria, along with a handful of intrepid travelers, followed the path. The higher they climbed, the closer the low-lying clouds came, until they appeared like silver rivers flowing among the hilltops. Suddenly, at the crest, an astounding sight greeted them. An ancient stone bridge stretching across a chasm filled with drifting clouds. The bridge's arches disappeared into a misty sea that glowed under the sunlight. Stepping cautiously onto the bridge, Maria felt as though she were traversing the sky. On either side, clouds shifted and parted, revealing glimpses of the valley far below, only to conceal it again in swirling vapors. Step by step, the travelers advanced, hearts imbued with a quiet, reverent thrill. In the middle of the bridge stood a small shrine carved meticulously into the stone rail. Simple offerings, flowers, handwritten notes rested in a shallow recess. A weathered plaque read, "For those who wander among the clouds, may their burdens be lifted on the wind." Maria paused, leaving a small sprig of eucalyptus in tribute. Regardless of one's beliefs, the sentiment rang true. Crossing a bridge, perched amid clouds, felt like being suspended between reality and dream. Beyond the midpoint, the mists parted slightly. A panoramic view opened up, revealing emerald valleys on both sides of the chasm. Rays of sunlight broke through the clouds like heavenly spotlights, dancing across the landscape. For a moment, Maria closed her eyes, letting the breeze wash over her. It carried the sense of damp earth, eucalyptus, and something that felt akin to hope. She exhaled worries that had been lurking in her subconscious, imagining them drifting away with the airborne moisture. Other travelers had stopped along the far side of the bridge to admire the vista. Some sat quietly on the low stone walls, legs dangling, faces lifted to the sun. Their silent communion with the space reminded Maria that travel isn't just about arriving. It's about those moments that stir the spirit. Here on the cloud bridge, each breath felt rarefied and pure. All too soon, the distant whistle of the Nowhere Express recalled them to the station. Back past the shrine, across the misty arches, and down the meandering path they went, each carrying the memory of that luminous crossing in their hearts. As they reboarded, the train resumed its patient journey, heading once again into unknown territories. Yet, the quiet wonder of traversing the clouds lingered, like a gentle vow spoken softly to the wind. Chapter 15, Painted Canyon. At sunset, shortly after leaving the misty hills behind, the Nowhere Express entered a winding route through arid terrain. The sun climbed high overhead, highlighting the changing geology. Rocky outcroppings, layers of sedimentary stone in pale pink, ochre, and dusky mauve. As afternoon stretched on, the air took on a shimmering quality, and the train finally slowed near a canyon whose walls appeared to have been splashed with an artist's palette. Stepping onto the station platform, a patch of dusty ground and a modest wooden roof, Maria gazed into Painted Canyon. Wind and water had sculpted the rock walls into graceful curves, and streaks of almost every hue revealed the mineral veins within. At a glance, it looked as though someone had brushed broad strokes of crimson, coral, and lavender across the canyon walls. A ranger-like figure wearing a wide-brimmed hat greeted the disembarking passengers with a friendly smile. "This place has colors you'll never forget," he remarked, gesturing toward a narrow trail leading down into the canyon floor. Maria followed, along with others, carefully descending into a natural corridor of pastel-toned rock. The stillness below felt akin to a hallowed cathedral, their footfalls softened by layers of sand. Sunset arrived in brilliant splendor. Shafts of golden light angled down into the canyon, igniting the colored bands with a breathtaking glow. Crimson layers blazed like embers, while pale green and violet streaks shimmered in subtle luminescence. All around, an otherworldly hush settled, as though nature itself was pausing to admire its own artistry. Maria found a small overhang to sit upon, legs dangling just above a shallow dry wash. From there, she watched the sunlight deepen the canyons, pallid minute by minute, until purples, reds, and oranges glowed with almost supernatural intensity. The air held a mild warmth, and occasional updrafts carried the scent of dust and sage. A few other travelers sat scattered along the canyon floor, each lost in quiet wonder at the spectacle. At one point, Maria noticed the ranger resting near an ancient carving on a stone ledge. Leaning closer, she saw petroglyphs etched into the sandstone, spirals, human figures, and symbols reminiscent of constellations. The ranger explained that these markings dated back centuries, perhaps created by a community that revered the land's vibrant energy. In that moment, Maria understood that Painted Canyon had been a place of awe for a long time, its radiant hues binding past and present in shared amazement. Gradually, dusk spread, and the canyon's colors shifted to deepening shadows. The ranger gently guided everyone back up the trail, cautioning them to mind their steps in the dimming light. By the time Maria returned to the station platform, stars had begun to prick the sky, and the canyon now loomed in dark silhouette. Still, the memory of its brilliance lingered in her mind like a vivid dream. Reboarding the train, Maria settled into her seat with a feeling of deep gratitude. The Painted Canyon's silent grandeur reminded her that nature can often surpass human imagination, and there are places where the earth itself becomes living art. As the carriage rocked gently onward, she closed her eyes, recalling the burnished glow of red and purple bands beneath the setting sun, an eternal masterpiece etched in stone. Chapter 16. Secret of the Lighthouse. Isle night wore on, accompanied by the steady lull of steel wheels on the rails. Sometime after midnight, the rhythmic melody coaxed Maria into a light sleep. When she awoke, dawn was just breaking, and the train rumbled across a narrow causeway, suspended over ocean tides. Through the windows, she glimpsed a small island crowned by a towering lighthouse, its stark silhouette set against the pinkish morning sky. The station, little more than a stone pier, came into view alongside gently lapping surf. The sign, almost salt-eaten, read, Aurora Isle. Stepping down from the train, Maria breathed in the brine-tanged air. Seabirds orchestrated a chorus overhead, their calls echoing off the lighthouse's whitewashed walls. A rowboat, weathered yet sturdy, was moored at the edge of the pier, ropes creaking against iron cleats. A tall, lean keeper of the lighthouse stood near the boat, gesturing with a warm grin. "Morning tide is calm," she said in a lilting accent. "Care for a guided trip around the island, then up the tower?" Maria nodded, curiosity piqued. A few other travelers also joined, gingerly stepping into the boat. The keeper rowed them along a rocky shoreline, where translucent waters revealed swaying kelp forests below. Jagged cliffs covered in thick moss rose above them, and small sea caves whispered with each surge of the tide. After a leisurely circuit, the keeper brought them ashore by a set of slick stone steps leading to the lighthouse entrance. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of salt and old stone. A spiral staircase wound upward, each step echoing in the cylindrical chamber. Ascending, they passed walls lined with maritime equipment, barometers, antique charts, and brass telescopes. Light filtered through narrow slits, illuminating dust motes in pale shafts. Finally, they emerged onto the lantern room, a circular gallery with glass windows offering a panoramic sea view. Standing beside the massive Fresnel lens, Maria felt that she was in the heart of some ancient guardian that watched faithfully over watery horizons. The keeper spoke in hushed reverence. For centuries, this lighthouse guided ships away from hidden reefs. On clear nights, its beam can be seen far out to sea, a quiet promise of safety. She revealed a shelf of old logs, each entry penned by previous keepers who recorded passing vessels and storms weathered. Maria flicked through a few pages, discovering chronicles of dramatic rescues, fierce squalls, and tranquil dawns, not unlike this one. Stepping onto a small terrace encircling the top, a gentle wind tugged at Maria's hair. The ocean below sparkled under the risen sun, waves rolling in rhythmic surges. Seabirds hovered on the breeze, occasionally diving for a fish. There she sensed a timelessness, each tide marking an unbroken chain of days, each flash of the lighthouse reminding travelers they were not alone. Soon it was time to descend and return to the station. As a parting gesture, the keeper handed Maria a small polished shell, an opalescent swirl capturing faint colors. A little memory of Aurora Isle, she said warmly. Maria gripped the shell, touched by the gesture. Once back on the train platform, she thanked the keeper for her guidance and boarded again, the train's engine softly humming. As the locomotive glided away, Maria stood by the window. The lighthouse receded into the distance, its white tower radiant under the mid-morning sun. She held the shell in her hand, reflecting on the steadfastness of that beacon in a shifting sea. In a world often marked by change, some lights stand unwavering, offering solace and hope with each pulse. Train carried her onward, yet part of her remained on the isle, warmed by that silent promise, shining against the endless horizon. Chapter 17. The Wishing Well in the Grove. Was nearly noon when the Nowhere Express ventured into rolling farmland quilted by orchards. Various shades of green and gold lined the horizon, punctuated by the occasional cluster of wildflowers. As the locomotive slowed, Maria spotted an old stone well beneath the shade of an immense oak tree, perhaps a relic of a bygone homestead. The station sign read Willow Grove, though only a handful of willows seemed visible near a clear running stream. Upon disembarking, she joined the other passengers in following a winding dirt path through leafy bowers. Overhead, branches arched, creating a dappled canopy. Soft birdsong mingled with the distant hum of bees among wild blossoms. Soon they reached the well Maria had glimpsed from the train, a curious centerpiece in an otherwise quiet clearing. Carved into its circular stone rim were symbols and faint script worn by time. An unassuming sign indicated it was once considered a wishing well. Local folklore suggested that if one dropped in a token while focusing on a heartfelt wish, the grove's gentle spirit might grant clarity, not necessarily fulfilling the wish in a literal sense, but guiding the wisher to find their own path toward it. Drawn by the well's unspoken magic, Maria approached. She placed her hands on the cool stone, gazing into the water below. Sunlight flickered on the surface, making it difficult to see the bottom. She thought about what she might wish for: peace, understanding, the gentle courage to face unknown roads ahead. Fishing a simple coin from her pocket, she closed her eyes, letting sincerity bloom in her chest. Then she dropped the coin into the well, hearing it plink against the water. For a long moment, the clearing seemed to hold its breath. Dappled shadows swayed on the grass, while a mild breeze picked up, rustling the leaves overhead. There was no grand epiphany or dazzling sign, only a subtle stirring in her heart, a feeling that perhaps life had quietly listened. A caretaker emerged from behind the oak, a middle-aged woman in a straw hat, holding a basket of herbs, offering a friendly greeting. She mentioned that she'd been tending the well and the grove for many years, ensuring the place remained welcoming for visitors. She spoke of how pilgrims once traveled far to see the well, each bringing forth hopes, burdens, or grief to lay at its waters. "How many wishes do you think have been made here?" Maria asked gently. The caretaker smiled, eyes drifting to the well. "More than I could count. Some came from children hoping for small joys, others from older folks seeking solace or healing. Not all were answered the way people expected, yet still the well offers a quiet space to reflect. Sometimes that's all we truly need." They conversed for a while, enjoying the hush of the grove. Squirrels chased each other among the roots, and a pair of finches flitted in the branches. Though the world beyond might be noisy and uncertain, here stood an enduring sanctuary, a humble reminder that hope can be rekindled in the simplest of places. When the train's whistle softly echoed across the farmland, Maria thanked the caretaker and made her way back. The well's presence lingered in her mind. Its waters might not grant literal miracles, but there was power in acknowledging one's desires and trusting the journey ahead. Reboarding, she found her seat by a window. As Willow Grove faded into the distance, she felt a tiny spark of renewed resolve flicker in her chest. A gentle echo of that coin slipping into the sunlit depths. Chapter 18. Candlelit concert in the ruins. Dusk was falling by the time the Nowhere Express arrived at the next station. Warm golden light flickered beyond the windows, interspersed with tall shadows that danced against ancient stone pillars. A sign, illuminated by torches, read, "Starlight Ruins." From the platform, a staircase led down into the remnants of an old fortress or temple. Walls tumbled into the ground, and columns stood like silent sentinels from a forgotten age. Curious, Maria ventured down with other passengers. As they stepped into the ruins, the glow of countless candles revealed a makeshift amphitheater within the crumbled enclosure. Residents, perhaps local musicians and visitors alike, had placed chairs and cushions around a low stage carved from part of the original foundation. Soft chatter filled the air, hushed in expectation of whatever performance was about to begin. Finding a seat on a stone ledge, Maria observed large urns filled with flame, casting wavering light across the ancient architecture. A hush fell over the small audience as a group of musicians, dressed simply, took places with their instruments: a flute, a cello, a harp, and a subtle percussion arrangement. The first notes arose, winding gracefully through the broken pillars, echoing off the ancient walls. The music was a gentle tapestry of classical and folk melodies, woven seamlessly. Each sustained chord under the moonlit sky felt like an incantation, resurrecting the grandeur that these ruins once held. Candles flickered in time with the lilting refrain, and a faint breeze rustled the grasses that grew among scattered stones. In that moment, the echoes of history and the softness of living artistry merged into something both timeless and immediate. As the concert progressed, some audience members closed their eyes, letting themselves drift on the currents of sound. Others watched the interplay of light and shadow, the musicians' silhouettes dancing across carved reliefs on the walls. Now and then, a soft gasp of wonder could be heard when the cello produced a deep, resonant note that seemed to linger in the fortress's bones. Feeling a surge of emotion, Maria realized tears pricking at her eyes. There was beauty in witnessing the resilience of old places reclaimed for quiet joys rather than left merely crumbling in forgetfulness. It was as if each chord spoke to the unbroken continuity of life, art rising from ashes, hope shining through ruins. When the final piece concluded, a lullaby-like melody, the audience clapped gently, many rising to offer thanks or greetings to the musicians. The candlelit setting felt intimate, like dear friends gathering in a sacred space. The group bowed graciously, the sound of soft applause echoing among empty arches. Slowly, people began to extinguish or collect the candles, allowing the ancient columns to melt back into nocturnal shadows. Maria lingered, taking a moment to wander among the half-fallen walls. She ran her fingers along the chiseled stones that spoke silently of eras gone by. Perhaps this place had known war or heartbreak centuries ago. Now it knew the tenderness of shared music under starlight. Walking back up the steps to the station, she marveled at how each stop along the Nowhere Express carried its own quiet grace, be it natural wonder, forgotten architecture, or heartfelt tradition. Boarding once again, she found her thoughts drifting to the gentle harmony that had enfolded the ruins. The whistle sounded, and the train began its nocturnal journey anew. From her window, she caught a final glimpse of the candle-lit ruins receding into darkness, and she felt certain that the music lingered there still, entwined with the memory of ancient stone, waiting for future travelers to discover its soft, enduring song. Chapter 19, River Lanterns at Twilight. The night sky shimmered with distant stars as the Nowhere Express pulled into a quiet riverside station. A gentle breeze carried the murmur of flowing water. Stepping onto the platform, Maria observed a wide, slow-moving river, edged by willow trees whose branches trailed delicately in the current. A sign stood nearby. Willow Light Bend. Lanterns swayed along the riverbank, their warm glow reflected in the water below. Not far from the station, a gathering of locals arranged floating paper lanterns shaped like blossoms, each containing a small candle. Their faces, lit by flickering flames, radiated anticipation. Approaching with curiosity, Maria almost felt as though she had wandered into a ceremony of whispered wishes. One of the locals, a kindly woman with graying hair, offered Maria a lantern and a painted slip of rice paper. "We're honoring the river spirits tonight, sending out lanterns to guide lost souls or unspoken hopes," she explained. "If you care to join, write a thought or a prayer, something you wish to send downstream." Maria knelt beside a makeshift table laid with brushes and ink. After a moment's reflection, she wrote a poem of gratitude to the journey that had softened her heart, to the countless wonders encountered, and to whatever lay ahead. Carefully, she tucked the slip inside the lantern. Then, with gentle hands, she placed the paper flower onto the river, watching the candlelight drift away on the current. Dozens of other lanterns soon bobbed alongside hers, golden petals opening to the night. The sight was mesmerizing, like a constellation set adrift in liquid darkness. Each tiny flame danced on the water's surface, carrying the silent yearnings and blessings of those who had released them. Standing on the bank, Maria felt a collective hush, a peaceful unity among strangers gathered by shared hope. Slowly, the lights drifted downstream, growing smaller as they followed the bend. Some local musicians, standing under a willow, plucked string instruments that added a serene backdrop to the moment. Their melody interwove with the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Even the train in the distance seemed hushed, as if it too paused in reverence. After a time, the participants began to disperse, hugging friends or exchanging soft farewells. The woman who had given Maria the lantern placed a light hand on her shoulder. "May your journey be guided by gentle currents," she said warmly. With that, Maria made her way back to the platform. Though the ceremony ended, its peaceful mood lingered long after the final lantern disappeared around the bend. Climbing aboard, She settled near the window, gazing at the tranquil reflection of lanterns in her memory. The train soon chugged away, leaving Willow Light Bend behind. Yet Maria felt certain that the hush of that river and its drifting blossoms of light would long brighten the inner corners of her mind. Chapter 20. The floating bazaar dawn broke to reveal a striking transformation in scenery. The Nowhere Express wove through swampy lowlands where tall reeds swayed and cypress trees rose from watery depths. Mist clung to the surface, giving the morning a ghostly calm. Soon, the train stopped at a rugged wooden platform partially built over a marshy inlet. A sign declared Lotus Bayou. Stepping down, Maria felt warm humidity settle on her skin. Thick vines draped wooden railings, and the scent of wet earth mixed with decaying foliage. A friendly boatman standing on the pier beckoned passengers to board a low, flat-bottomed boat. "We're heading to the floating bazaar," he announced. "Climb aboard if you want a taste of bayou trade." Intrigued, Maria and a few others joined. They drifted along narrow waterways, lined with moss-laden branches and blooming lotus flowers. Occasionally, a turtle slid off a log, vanishing into the water. The boatman's gentle poling propelled them into a broader canal, and soon the floating bazaar came into view, a colorful collection of small rafts and boats linked together, each acting as a vendor's stall. Flags and ribbons fluttered overhead, reflecting in the greenish water below. The smell of spiced food and sweet pastries wafted through the air. Merchants called out greetings, offering woven baskets, handcrafted trinkets, and jars of pickled vegetables or fruit preserves. One raft displayed intricately carved wooden masks depicting folklore spirits of the swamp. Another stall sold shimmering beads and amulets said to bring good fortune. Maria stepped onto a stable raft used as a shared walkway. Music drifted from a nearby boat, where a fiddler played a lively tune in harmony with the croaking frogs. She sampled a local sweet tea infused with fragrant herbs. The flavor was both cooling and mildly spicy. In the bustling chaos, there was a warm undercurrent of community, families chatting, children giggling, and travelers bartering with the good-natured merchants. Amid the crowd, Maria noticed an older woman sitting quietly in a small canoe, legs crossed. Her short table displayed delicately painted fans and cloth pouches. Approaching, Maria admired the artistry. The woman smiled, her eyes half hidden by laugh lines. Each fan is meant to catch the bayou breeze and remind one of the hidden wonders in these waters, she explained softly. Maria purchased a fan adorned with lotus blossoms, drawn by the gentle pinks and greens reminiscent of the floating flowers around them. As she held it, a mild gust ruffled the fan's edges, carrying a whisper of cool relief. Thanking the woman, she felt an inexplicable gratitude for the small treasures found in unexpected corners of the world. Eventually, the boatman ushered Maria and the other travelers back on board, noting that the train would not wait indefinitely. As they navigated away from the floating bazaar, Maria caught a final glimpse of its vibrant tapestry, a community thriving on water and tradition, anchored by a shared sense of wonder. Soon, the boat slid next to the station's pier, and she stepped back onto solid ground. When the Nowhere Express chugged out of Lotus Bayou, Maria fanned herself gently with her new souvenir. Outside the window, mossy cypress trunks glided by. She closed her eyes, recalling the colorful rafts shifting on rippling water and the taste of spiced tea. The memory felt like a lullaby for the senses, a sweet cadence that lingered long after the land receded into the horizon. Chapter 21. Mountain Song. In the high pass from the wetlands, the train ventured northward into a region of rising altitude. Temperatures cooled, and the greenery gradually shifted to rugged, pine-covered slopes. The engine's rumble echoed against cliff faces as it climbed a serpentine track up into the mountains. By late afternoon, they arrived at a small highland station perched beside a roaring cascade. The sign, half hidden by mist, read, "Valley of Echoes." Maria stepped down, inhaling the crisp mountain air with a grateful sigh. The thunder of nearby waterfalls reverberated across the valley, mixing with the rush of wind through evergreen boughs. A narrow path led toward a cliff edge where a series of footbridges spanned deep ravines. In the distance, jagged peaks stood like castle walls against the sky. Carefully, she made her way across the first footbridge. The boards creaked underfoot, but the sturdy rope railings offered a sense of security. The roar of water grew louder, and upon glancing over the side, she saw a tremendous waterfall plunging into a chasm below. Sheets of silver-white spray rose in an eternal cloud, moistening the air. A rainbow glimmered at the waterfall's base, where sunlight pierced the mist. Farther along, a rock ledge served as a panoramic viewpoint. Standing there, Maria heard the wind shift, carrying distant notes of what sounded like chanting or a melodic call. Intrigued, she followed a smaller path uphill until she reached a natural amphitheater formed by stone walls. At its center stood 3 travelers, 2 carrying stringed instruments, one with a slender flute. Their gentle tune reverberated, amplified by the natural acoustics. They paused briefly, noticing Maria's approach, then offered a welcoming wave. Continuing their impromptu concert, the trio played a piece that mingled with the surrounding forest hush. The flute's sweet notes rose, echoing off stone and weaving gracefully with the strum of strings. It was as if the mountains themselves were harmonizing, a deep, resonant background hum produced by the cascades and sighing breeze. The music summoned emotions akin to awe and introspection, swirling together in her chest. Maria found a seat on a rock, letting the performance wash over her. Occasional bird calls joined in, as did the distant rush of water, creating a living symphony. When at last the final chord faded, the group smiled at her, gratitude shining in their eyes. "Thank you for listening," said the flutist softly. "We often come here to practice. Something about this place invites us to shed all pretense and let the music flow." Maria wholeheartedly agreed. Amid these mountains, it felt as though layers of worry peeled away, leaving only presence and sound. Eventually, the echo of the train's whistle reminded her that time was passing. She thanked the trio, gleaning fresh peace from their music, and retraced her steps back across the footbridges. As she boarded, the thunder of the waterfall still pounded the air, like a heartbeat etched into the land. The train began its descent through the high pass, and Maria couldn't help feeling a gentle longing to remain immersed in that mountain melody just a little while longer. Chapter 22. Whispering Winds in the Desert. Night fell swiftly as the Nowhere Express ventured into a different desert region, one defined by rolling dunes that shimmered under moonlight like velvet waves. The station platform at duskfall dunes was a simple wooden deck illuminated by a single lantern. Stepping onto the sand, Maria felt the temperature had dropped sharply, the nocturnal air cool against her face. Stars blanketed the sky in a dazzling sweep of silver. The desert breeze carried a faint, whispering sound, as if grains of sand passed secrets along the dunes. A solitary guide with a broad scarf around her face greeted the travelers, inviting those brave enough to trek into the shimmering night. Maria joined, heart sparked by a sense of adventure. They walked in single file, each footstep sinking softly, leaving prints soon erased by the wind. Under the moon, the dunes took on gently shifting silhouettes, their curves graceful as living sculptures. Occasionally, a streak of starlight would highlight the crest of a dune, giving it a ghostly glow. The hush was profound, broken only by a distant coyote's call or the scuff of boots in sand. Reaching a broad dune summit, the guide signaled for everyone to sit. She pointed to the horizon, where faint silver clouds drifted. "If you listen, truly listen, you may hear the dunes speak," she intoned, voice muffled by her scarf. At first, the group sat in silence, uncertain. Then a gentle gust arose, sending a cascade of sand down the slope, creating a soft murmuring sound. Another breeze joined, and the sound deepened, a resonant hum like a distant choir. Maria closed her eyes, focusing on the subtle vibrations. It was as if the desert itself was exhaling thoughts and dreams, weaving them into the air. A feeling of kinship washed over her, connecting her heartbeat to the ancient rhythms beneath the sand. Time fell away, leaving only moon, star, and wind. Once the breeze subsided, the guide commenced the return journey. Hiking back by starlight felt surreal, with no city glow to interfere. Upon reaching the station, Maria looked over her shoulder at the endless desert. In that vast emptiness, she understood an essential truth. Even when alone with nature's hush, one is in the presence of something profoundly alive and infinite. Boarding the train, a sheen of fine sand dusted her coat, a small reminder of the night's excursion. She settled into her seat, pressing her forehead to the glass. Outside, the dunes glided by in waves of silver shadow, gradually disappearing as the locomotive pushed on into the deeper realms of darkness and time.